What if everything that you've ever learned about spirituality, leadership, and success was missing the most important part? My guest today went back to the original texts, the ones the church literally tried to destroy, and what she found changed everything. Hey, I'm Sasha Pearl, the energy architect, and today I'm sitting down with Lauren Borden, a holistic leadership coach and PhD. She is the woman behind The Garden and The Beauty Way, and also runs her private practice coaching business. Lauren works at the intersection of somatics, soul level leadership, Christian mysticism, and ancient technology. And this conversation goes deep. Let's get into it. Today on the podcast, we have Dr. Lauren Borden. She is a holistic leadership coach, and she runs her private practice coaching business as well as The Garden. She is also a 4-6 with emotional authority, which we'll dive into that a little bit later. But Lauren, welcome. We'd love to hear more about you.
Hey, lady, thank you so much for having me. I'm like so excited. I'm so excited to be here. Yeah, and I mean, I feel like it's kind of cool being in this space with you because I feel like you know me so much at this point personally, but professionally, yeah, I'm a holistic leadership coach, which basically means that folks often come to me with the experience of burnout or just really wanting to make a deeper impact in their lives and in the world. And the way I work, my background is quite strategic. I was in the corporate world for a long time. So while I have an abundance of leadership strategies, the work that I really thrive in is around somatics and the soul level foundational work that actually allows you to not just have an impact that's aligned with who you're meant to be in the world, but actually like fundamentally change the fabric of who you are, so that you become more authentic, which I think is also one of the reasons why you and I vibe so much. Cause it's like, I sort of do work very similar to you, but often spaces with just in a little bit of a different way. But we have the same clientele, I think, in many ways. Yeah.
Yes, I would love more of your clientele. Um, so Lauren's incarnation cross too, which is about like the divine themes in your life, is the vessel of love. So she is literally the embodiment of love in every aspect of your life. So I love that you are obviously bringing in authenticity, and the part of authenticity is getting people back to the core of who they are, to love themselves, to have more compassion for themselves in the world. So
Thank you for reminding me of that, actually, because there are two really big threads in my work right now. One is around like love as an ethic. And I find that a lot of the folks I work with, that's a driver for them. It's like, how do I love the world better? How do I show up for people? How do we bring compassion? And love, like it really is not love like we've been taught, because many of us have been taught that love is just sort of letting anybody walk all over you. And it's like, no, sometimes love is fierce and sometimes love is ferocious. Um, and then the second one is around in my own practice and spiritual practice, I've really been exploring more around Christian mysticism. And spoiler alert, Christian mysticism in many ways can be boiled down to God is love. Love is God. Love is the divine. Like everything that we've been taught, that spirituality is actually about is just removing everything in between you and love. So I'm glad to know that that's in my human design in a really tangible way. Thank you for reminding me of that.
I love that. I'd
Yeah.
actually love to hear a little bit more about Christian mysticism, because from what I know about you, and I have been friends for 2 years now.
Yeah.
We divinely got connected, and it's just been a little love affair ever since. And I feel like Christian mysticism is something that's been newly online for you. I mean, maybe it's always been there, but yeah, tell me a little bit more about what it is and how you are integrating it into the work that you are doing in the world.
Totally. Yeah. And I think this might vibe with you too, because I know, can I say that you like love like the Mary Magdalene stuff was coming online for you like a year ago? Wasn't that kind of in a weird way? Yeah. Um, so the thing I'll say is, so I grew up Christian. Like I grew up in an evangelical household, and I left the church when I was 15. In a very dramatic fashion. I'm happy to tell the story. I don't want to eat up too much time, but I left in a very dramatic fashion. And then in the years that followed, particularly once I got into my 20s, a lot of my work and inquiry was around sort of like really finding my way back to a spirituality that felt true and that took the pieces that I sort of knew to be true in my childhood and that really resonated with me, and really allowing myself to release the rest. And that work ended up actually translating in a really interesting way in coaching, because I often found like people would end up in front of me and I would not talk about this. This was not something I was talking about out in the world. And like, right, energetics, people just land in front of you, right, who need what you're working, and whether you're talking about it or not. And so I would often end up with these women and leaders and people in front of me who would share, they're like, I grew up Christian and they had stories similar to mine. And so often when we were looking at like, what is your life ethic? What are your values? What are your drivers? Like, what do you want your life to be about and your legacy to be about? We would end up coming back to these themes that resonated with people in their childhood, but they were almost sort of taught weren't real or weren't important. So these things like slowness, stillness, love, like, loving one another, community, like these really foundational pieces of what it means to be human, being sacred. And a lot of the work ended up being just giving a ton of permission for that. And simultaneously was doing that work in my own life. And through that process, I'm a big nerd. Like I've got a PhD, so I like reading things and understanding things despite being in the kind of somatic and spiritual space. And I started reading on different translations of biblical texts. I was going back to like the Greek and then trying to triangulate the Aramaic and looking at some of the actual language. Like big nerd, like you're giggling. Yeah. Like I went in and was because I was like starving for an explanation of why so many of us had been exposed to the church and been like, there is so much beauty here, but why is it kind of getting corrupted out in the world or kind of twisted in this way where it's like being used as an agent of hate? And um, started looking into translations, started reading more of what we call the apocryphal texts. So those were the texts that were biblical, but not actually included in the main like canonical text. So the church went like, these books, not those, basically. So the ones they were like, not those, I was like, I want in on those.
You're like, give me the other side. I need a full perspective here.
And when you read them, when I read them, it gave me language for what I had been like, the path I had been walking the entire time. And these texts talk about the spiritual practice of dropping into the heart of your heart and your body being a literal doorway to God and the divine.
It says that in the books.
Yes, it talks about the heart, what they call it. The direct translation is a Greek word called nous or new, spelled Nous. And it's translated in the books as mind. But like in the Bible and where the word nous shows up, the way they usually translate it is mind. But contextually, if you look at the way it was used in Greek, the more literal translation is the spiritual eye of the heart.
Oh.
Right. And like,
like, wait, what?
and I had been walking this path where I'm learning like intuitive development and somatics, and I'm learning like, I'm learning meditation and these different meditative practices where you drop into the heart. And I'm having these experiences where I drop into my heart and I'm like, I can see everything. Why can I see everything? And why are old patterns that I used to have that used to make me miserable are falling away when I'm doing this? And then I read, like the most impactful one was probably the Gospel of Mary Magdalene. Strongly recommend if you haven't read it. It's very short, but if you can read also some of the like theological analyses of it, so works of people like Cynthia Bourgeault or like Karen King, they're able to kind of look at it through the lens of all of the theological texts. So they start pulling like all of the times the word new is used, all of the time like these words are used to be able to make sense of it. And in these sort of Christian mystic traditions, a very clear picture emerges where it's like actually what was occurring was that Jesus and Mary Magdalene were showing us what it looked like they called it kenosis, self-emptying, to actually like internally purify, not because we're bad, but because it's actually about coming back to love and then walk the path such that you become one with God and remember that you're God in human form.
Oh my God, the vessel of love is here somehow. That's crazy.
It was. And it was like reading these things, I'm like, wait, what and it's and what that's what's cool about it is that there are these also when you look at these texts, a lot of these ancient texts have been like deleted um and destroyed. Like they were forcibly destroyed because the church was like, yo, we can't have people thinking that they have access to God. That's not gonna work for our business model, man. And
Crazy.
it's not gonna work. And so, and you go to them and it's actually, oh, I lost my train of thought a little bit, but they're very, very clear about, yeah, like you having the access point and that like all of these other lineages, right? So things like like Tibetan Buddhism and meditation and like yoga and these things, like Jesus and Mary Magdalene in many ways were living a lot of these practices in a way that's been pretty violently deleted. So being able to go back and get them and be like, actually, all of these things that like you're doing, that I'm doing, we're actually remembering what those teachings were supposed to be, despite those texts having been big chunks of them being deleted and distorted and all these pieces.
So have you I mean, it sounds like you obviously have so much knowledge on so many different aspects of, like, spiritual beliefs, which
Uh-huh.
is because I think that makes a really well-rounded perspective. Have you always been on this pursuit of knowledge in this specific way?
Awesome question. I've always been really curious. Like when I left the church when I was 15, um, I was just starving for like spiritual. I thought spirituality and self-development was so interesting. When I was little, one of the first things I said, people say, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I would run around. I said I wanted to be a pastor. And then when that fell off, I said I wanted to be a public speaker. So like I loved like learning and people and growth and all this stuff. And yeah, so but that probably started officially like in a spiritual vein maybe around the time I was 18. Um and then but it was all very intellectual. Like I
Okay.
hence the PhD, right? I lived in a world where if you can't measure it, it doesn't exist, like Brené Brown says, right? And was like trying to mentally make sense of all these things that were kind of inexplicable because I could feel things really deeply. And so I learned a lot and I got really comfortable learning a lot. And then in recent years, it's turned way more into like intuition in the body, where it's like, oh, actually, I have a really powerful mind, but there are these other ways of experiencing and learning and knowing that don't involve like being able to rattle off, which Bible verses and theological texts and apocryphal texts like mention the word new, which I can give you, but isn't, like it's like that's kind of supplementary at this point. So that shifted actually a lot with my work with like the garden and the beauty way, and which you've seen
Mhm.
firsthand. Yeah.
Yeah, actually, let's have you talk about, like, what is the beauty way was what it started as, and you have built it into the garden. So let's go there. Let's talk a little bit more about like what that is and why it's important for you and your fullest expression now, and also for the world and the impact it will have for future generations.
Yes. So both the beauty way and the garden, um, well, I mean, they completely changed create birthing them, because it's interesting because I wouldn't say creating them. It felt more like birthing them, like they were already entities that like wanted to be on the planet, that were on the planet in various forms. Like the beauty way is a term that's actually been used across lineages. Like the Navajo use the word the beauty way. It shows up in Christian mysticism. It showed up in all these places we didn't know actually when we came up with that name.
There a description you didn't know when interesting. I don't get
Yeah. Well, Chelsea and I were on like a Zoom call, like you and I are right now, and she just goes, "I just heard the name The Beauty Way." And I was like, and I kind of went like, "Beauty, like what?" Like I didn't, and then I sat with it and I was like, "Whoa, that's really profound." And then we started like getting hit with these different randomly. We didn't go looking. Like these different people came across our paths that would use the phrase. Suddenly it was everywhere. And yeah, Navajo tradition, Christian mysticism, Sufism, and in Greece, they talked about it too.
So how is the beauty way described before we move into what it is in your form.
Yes, these other so the beauty way is, the way it's described out in the world is a way of walking through life in a way that you are connected with the beauty that is in all things, in reverence for the sacred, and in right relationship with life. And the different kind of like lineages have a little bit of a different take, like Sufism and Christian mysticism, it's like remove everything in the way of you and love. In the Navajo tradition, it's much more of like an indigenous feel where there's this deep, deep reverence for the earth and Mother Nature. Like everyone sort of has a different access point, but they're all speaking sort of to the same thing. And so all of these are in the way that we built the Beauty Way and the garden. And so really the central idea is that most of us are really starving for this experience of life, but we can't quite articulate what it is. And it's because, in many ways, we've been disconnected from our humanity and from our sacredness and the understanding that these two things are one. And um, it was a huge breakthrough for me even to work with Chelsea and create a space like this because it was the first time I didn't have like a 10-point PowerPoint on like teachings of like, here's what the beauty way is. And I'm going to ask you these questions. And instead, it's really a space where we drop you into ceremony and ritual and the use of these ancient technologies that allow you to remember the magic that is in who you are and in life itself. And as a consequence, people leave this space with this deep sense of sacredness of life, such that their whole lives reorient around what needs to be central, which is usually community, connection, spirit, a totally different pace of living, sustainability, authenticity, and not needing to prove anything. Like it's really a giant pattern interrupt for like the kind of hustle grind culture that we're force fed in many ways. Um, and the other piece is that the beauty way is really what the energy we're working with there is really around the divine feminine. So we're working more um, with these energies of like what it means to be woman and remembering in our bodies what it means to be woman and the like true power that can emerge when we live like that, right? And there's not the power that we're taught. Like the power that we're taught is like I'm stronger than you. This is like no, where you just like know your power in your cells because you remember who you are.
This is, yeah. So the beauty way, they used to call it a retreat. Let me tell you, it's just not that. It isn't an initiation. So I went to this beauty way retreat that Lauren was just talking about last year. And this is the retreat that Sasha Pearl came online. This is a retreat I literally cried every single day at. This is the retreat I met such a beautiful group of women and was like led so deeply and intuitively back into my own remembering. Like it literally, like the container itself, everyone there is literally a fucking portal and mirror back into who you are. And so the work is so intense and so powerful. Like to your, like, I feel like you said the consequences, the shifting of like your entire world turns upside down. So like it's not like for me, I mean, I don't know if you know anyone who it just slightly pivoted something for. Like I think it's like massive upheavals of your life happen after this retreat,
Just like
which I
little baby
really
tweaks.
recommend people go and do.
Well, in love, I also want to acknowledge you and how you showed up for that because you went in knowing like we hadn't done any of the we were like I still have a hard time explaining what the heck this is because it feels like it transcends language. And despite that, you were
It
like
does.
you had this sense and you came. Actually, I'm curious. Can I ask you a question on your own
Yeah.
podcast? What had you like? What had you say yes? Like, what had you feel the resonance and move towards it? Because you easily could have said
Well,
no.
I had no idea what you and Chelsea were doing. But all I knew is that I didn't want to be in Bend that weekend. It felt really important to like go do something differently, something that I thought would be, it was uncomfortable to go in the sense like I didn't know anyone who was going either. Right. And I've never done like a weekend retreat with a bunch of people before, but I was just like, whatever I'm doing right now is not working. And I was so deeply in my masculine, like deeply like in like
Yes.
it's only one way or the highway. And like really like leaving that retreat and having this whole new, well, first of all, I got to be in my feminine because I got to cry. And like, I think even at the retreat, I was like, something about there, like, oh, me not crying means that I'm in power, in control, or like, yeah, like more in control. Where in actuality, that's completely disconnecting from my soul, from my humanness. And so to be able to be held in a container, connect with nature, the ancient technologies, which I want to talk about that in a moment, um, is what was just so like, oh my God, I missed the fucking point. I literally missed the fucking point. And so leaving that retreat, I was like, I can't do my life this way. Also, I'm changing my goddamn name, apparently. And that was a whole other story. But that is the type of work where it's like the remembering is so fucking true. Like it can be so far in the background, but by the end of the retreat, it's something where you like move forward enough to even bring it into an awareness and consciousness. Because Chelsea kept activating me. I was like so annoyed. I was like, I'm so annoyed. Because I would ask a question because I'm trying to control the narrative, control how I'm going to say something. And she's like, well, what do you think? Well, what do
Remember
you think
that?
it means? It means whatever you want it to mean. And I'm like, I will murder someone.
You were also so chill in that moment. You wouldn't have guessed that you're like, "I'm gonna fucking cut you." Can I swear on here? I just
Yeah.
swear. But, like, because you're, like, so cute and funny, and you're just like, "Okay," and meanwhile but I also love I wanna, like, bottom line what you just said because I think a lot of folks like okay, so this is the case with the beauty way. I also my sense is that this is also the case with any kind of change that you experience, right? Our minds do not like change. We don't and also the world, like everything in our world is like be smart, be logical, have it figured out. What's the 10-point plan? Do you have the Excel spreadsheet? And by the way, have you figured out these other 50 things yet? So within that model, of course you're even like inside when you're inside of it, it feels like that is the solution. That you just have to run harder and figure it out harder. And then when you go to drop that like you want out of it, but when you go to drop that model, and I've seen this a million times and I've also experienced this a million times, where then your mind gets really loud and will try to like all of your control strategies get louder. Like, and being able to actually, and what I was so proud of you for is the way that you held yourself through that. You witnessed it. You were like, huh. And like you didn't let it take you out. You kept walking. And that's really what it takes to change, to shift this, because that the roots of the old of the thing that we've been taught where it's like we have to control, dominate, and work harder to be joyful and successful. First off, it's not true. And also, those roots are deep and usually go all the way back into our lineages. And what I think you found that was really cool, and what also I am perpetually humbled by, is that the roots of this other way of being are even deeper and they're right freaking there if you can just allow yourself to be in this kind of space and let go, which is what you did. And I was just like so freaking proud of you because it's I mean, I'll say when I went through this kind of thing, I did not go willingly. Like I
I thought I was going willingly, but I don't think I was.
I just I like fought like a motherfucker. I think a lot of people do. And so do you don't feel like you did go willingly?
No, I did go willingly,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
I didn't know what I was signing up for because if I knew what I was signing up for, I probably wouldn't have gone willingly.
I know, I don't think you would have actually with
No.
it can be a
Um,
blessing to not know. Yeah, yeah.
but something that I want to also underline there, it's like you mentioned, essentially having the resilience to keep moving forward at this retreat. And like, this is the power of actually being in a container with other women walking the same path as you. Because I don't know if I would have chosen that if I was by myself. I don't
Yes.
know if I would have chosen that alone. Right. And so to have other people who are getting activated, crying, getting like scream, like, I don't want to sound like it's crazy, but
Yeah, yeah.
somatic work here, people.
Somatic work can have some intensity. Yeah. Uh-huh.
Yes. And like it's just such a powerful way to not only connect with yourself but connect with yourself in community without losing your autonomy is very very powerful.
Well, and I think that's a really important piece too, because it's I don't know about you, love. I'm like really I think I've just said this on a podcast with Chelsea the other day, actually. I had her on mine and I was like, I would have done this work alone for the rest of my life if I had had my own way. Like I I love people. My whole job is around people and I love people. And also I'm like, leave me alone. Leave me alone. I'm gonna go do this alone. I can like the individualism, like shit runs deep. And
We're so
yeah,
similar in
I'm
that.
like, please,
I'm
please.
like, I will do it faster my way. Thank you.
Exactly.
I don't want your approval. Thank you. I'm just gonna go do it. Just approve. Like, get on board or get off. I just don't.
Well, because usually then you're in a community and there's all this stuff, and now you gotta like, there's like now we have to tend to all of these things that wouldn't be here if I were by myself.
And I'm like,
And
time is a ticking, people.
the time is ticking. And I'm like, I actually don't, at least for me, I'm same. I would not be here without that community component. And I also we would not be having the level of impact we were having without that community component. So I'm a huge like follow your intuition, listen to your body person, almost like with the exception of the community piece where I'm like, if you're standing on the edge of, I don't know if I want to do this in a group or like in community and there's resistance there, I'm like, yes, all of us have resistance to that. And like, that's where the magic is. Obviously, trust yourself. I don't want to completely gaslight your audience, but it really is. I love that you spoke to that because it really is like the missing ingredient, I think, in a lot of spaces, unfortunately.
Here's the thing, too. When we are about to engage in community events, we're literally meant to be there. Like, the universe is literally always working this little puzzle magic because you had to experience something bad, good, in between, neutral or not, right? Like, you were meant to be in like any situation that you're here for, right? Like, there is a lesson that your soul wants to learn from it, wants to be in abundance of or overflow around, right? Like, I just really feel like everything happens for a reason and we get to be mirrors and reflections of that beauty.
Yeah, and I'm sure you've gotten to see that too with like Wild, Well, and Wealthy and what you've built there. Cause it's like sometimes even as a facilitator, I'm floored, right? Where the women end up in the space and suddenly you're like exchanging. It's like you've no idea why that woman is sitting next to you, and then she starts talking about something and you're like, "Wait, that's so weird, that's what I'm handling," or they just walked through something where they have wisdom for you, or someone looks at you and goes, "Hey love, by the way, your name's not Lindsay, it's Sasha." Like these sorts of tidbits like can only happen in community. And so I don't know, that's like a real place where I'm like, you know pushing past resistance is a good thing, and it can bring up so many things for us. Like community in many ways is where so many of our pains and wounds and traumas were born. So that's not to like minimize. It can be really uncomfortable, but it can be really beautiful. So
Yeah, 100%. And yeah, the beauty way is, yeah, I always say, I'm like, the beauty way changed my life, like, for the better. And it's just something that you guys have to, I don't know, I can't even, I'm like, there aren't even words to describe the transformation that happens in these like weekend retreats. Um, but definitely go check out their website. They just launched one, which is great.
okay, you all, if you are listening to this, you need to understand something. I think also a lot of people who are in spiritual spaces can identify with this, where it's like you are tapping into this thing and you're like, how the hell do I put this into human language? Because the felt sense of the things feels so much larger than words. And then it can almost feel like hard to hand off to somebody. And like, you're like, no, because I don't want you to like ruin the magic. And we handed this to you, y'all. We handed this to Sasha, and she somehow took it and gave it form in a way that I never would have possibly imagined. Chelsea and I just keep going back. Like I think all of our traffic is us actually just looking at our website going like, this is so good. We love this so much. So I have to talk you up there for a minute.
Well,
Yeah.
and I mean, as you guys can hear, I'm a self-projected, so you can hear my passion for this retreat through my voice. But this is because I got to experience it in such depth and with such opportunity. I was able to really lean into the visual aspects and the branding of it. I was like, I know. I was like, I got you. I'm Chelsea. I got Chelsea did not want a website.
Oh yeah, we had to fight. Some of these structures we had to like. We were like, okay, I know, like an LLC and a business banking account and a Calendly, like all of these. It's like, oh god, the business structures. But And now we're here. Actually, now we're here and we're like having a ton of fun. Who knew? Who knew
Yeah.
that shit could be
Well,
fun?
if
But
we think
yeah.
about the feminine, it needs to exist in the structure so you can be more feminine. So it's just nice to have like the team, the council to like really support that. And just for anyone who's listening, Chelsea is the co-founder of the garden, the co-facilitator of the Beauty Way, and Lauren's soul bestie. Anything else you want to describe her as?
Yeah, she was like a co-parent of this thing. And yeah, Chelsea's brilliant. She was so one of the things to know about Chelsea and the medicine she brings is that she was initiated into shamanism when she was 13. So
So cool.
she studied with indigenous wisdom keepers for years, who then looked at her and said, "We want you to bring this out into the world because we think it's gonna help it heal," basically. And so she's been given permission for certain ceremonial practices that we weave in throughout the couple of days, and I'm really fortunate to be able to partner with her on it because she's like a literal force of nature, and she's a literal force of nature. Like when you think about the 5 elements, like there should really just be a 6th, and one of them is Chelsea.
That's so good. It was just her birthday. I'm like, you should have said that to her on her
I know,
birthday.
I just realized, I was like, "Oh, that's good." That just came right out of me. It
So
came
good.
right out
No,
of
like
me.
you guys both individually are forces of nature in like your own unique ways. So like it's literally a powerhouse dynamic for what they're bringing into the world. And if you're in local to Bend, you're gonna get a little piece of them because they're offering a workshop called Trusting the Unseen. So I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about that now.
Yes, totally. So, and I'm cognizant too of like the folks who are listening to this who are like, I'm not going to be in Bend or I have no interest in attending an initiation. And I think the thing I want to say broadly about this is like, well, so trusting the unseen is an event, but the energy we're working with isn't something that like it's something that's accessible, right? Which is, um, in many ways in the world, we're taught to prioritize a certain way of knowing. I mean, I even just spent probably 20 minutes earlier rattling off like all of the research that I've done because I can have a ton of fun there. Sometimes that's a beautiful thing. And many of us have these more subtle ways of knowing in our bodies and actually even being able to kind of communicate with the earth and with our surroundings in a way that we are always getting signs. And a lot of times that might feel really true for some people listening. That might feel really like wacky and not accessible for some people listening. But often that experience of like, there's something subtle at play here, but I can't quite give language to it. Um, that's part of our magic as humans. Like that's part of what it means to be human and the intelligence that we actually have access to. That is also a technology, and we've just forgotten it. Um, And so, in the beauty way and trusting the unseen and our work in the garden is really around learning to trust that. Um, and tangibly, like that matters, right? Because I think also as women and men, I mean, regardless of gender identity, right? Like, how often have we had the experience where we have a sense that something isn't a good idea or that we really want to do something or that we're being called to something but then we like shit on it or like that's not real, I can't do that, that's not logical, and like it costs us in our lives. And so really being able to cultivate that relationship of trust of like, no, when I get a knowing, when something drops in, I listen to it, um, and the difference that can make in your life and also in the world. Because honestly, that's how a lot of really big ideas come through that like we need as a collective right now. So that's the energy that we're really learning that we're working with at Trusting the Unseen, where it's like really having a felt experience of what it's like to move through life with this and interfacing with this way of knowing and technology such that you leave and it's like, oh, I can locate it now in my body. Like I don't have to work so hard. I can kind of, as I move through the world, go, oh, right, this is actually what I know, and trust it and move with it.
Yeah. And with all the work that Lauren and Chelsea like put into the world, it's going to be deep and it will be activating. And I will be there. So come say hi.
Yeah, we work in the activation space, which is very different from like what I used to do. I in many actually maybe not, but I it was a newer way of working where it's there's a way that um e- energy can kind of move through the space where it turns things on versus like going in through the mind and I'm sure, you've had that experience probably even just in life where you're like, "Oh, I'm changed now that that thing occurred." And
Yep.
it's like that.
Yeah, the beauty way. Uh, I do want to talk about, I found it really interesting when we first started the podcast, you were talking about love and you
Mm,
said this as if people actually understood it, which is why I want to bring it back.
okay.
You're like, love, but not in the way that people assume love to be, right?
Yeah.
And so I want to talk about
Mm,
love, this word for you, and like what is the true meaning of, or what is the meaning of it? And then you keep saying ancient technology. And I also want to go into, wait, we're not talking about a computer, this microphone, us, the internet. We're talking about our internal technology. And so what's that about? So let's start with love. So what is the current belief of what love is in the societal norm? Obviously people have their own definitions. And then what is your belief around the word love?
hell yeah. Awesome question. So love, in my experience, when I bring it to my clients as an ethic or a posture or way of being, like this is just the broad experience I have in the world, is that we have an assumption that it means being soft, um, like having what's it called? Like weak spine. What's the phrase? Weak spine?
Spineless?
Spineless, right? Yeah, so we assume love means being weak, spineless, people pleasing, like, or that love means, you can just have everything, my time, my attention. And, one of the most loving creatures on the planet is a mama bear around her cubs. And have you ever gotten in between a mother bear and her cubs?
Mm.
If you have, you probably aren't listening to this podcast because you're probably dead. So, so love takes many forms, right? Love can be nurturing like a mother. Love can be, um, just give, give, give. And how do I just give as much compassion as possible? Sometimes compassion and love take the form of fire, of I love you so much, I'm going to tell you this directly because I believe in you enough to tell you the truth. And sometimes those are actually the hardest moments, right? Um, or even in relationships, right? Like love just means harmony. Like love just means like we have to get along. And it's like, no, sometimes the most loving moments are like you are in breakdown, you're about to tap out and say, I can't do this anymore. You want to punch someone in the face. And you show up anyway, not bypassing any part of your experience, but in truth and in partnership and like holding the container and going like, I don't know what to do with all of this, but I'm going to still show up for you and I want to see what happens.
Oh, wow. That's powerful.
Yeah. And like that to me, that's actually the spiritual practice that gets to transcend any kind of relationship to a deity, a spiritual framework, any of that, regardless of whether you call yourself a Christian mystic, a Tibetan, or an atheist. That's the kind of power that like changes the world, in my opinion.
100%. And this is such, I would say, a powerful belief system on love and a complete reframe on love. So, how did you find that? Like, how did this come to be from your perspective? Is it through everything that you've learned from, in the head? Is it through lived experiences? Where did it just drop in and it was given to you? Like, how did you, like, it's such a beautiful, like, literal vessel.
Schnikes. I'm sitting with like, how the hell do I answer that? So Schnikes on the internet. That's a really good question, love. Thank you. I think I've been a devotee of this energy for a really long time. When I was really little, I don't know if I've ever told you this. My mom was really sick. Did I ever tell you that?
No.
I grew up with a mom who giant heart, so loving, but had a lot of like chronic pain. And so love for me when I was little, like I got really good at showing up for people when they were in pain because that was my sort of ethos. So I got good at that young. And then later the lesson had to be love outside of caretaking or like love still while I have a self.
Mhm.
right? Like there were these codes that there were like those codes were important, but there were ones that were missing that needed to get upgraded. And I think more recently, some of the lessons around like love can be ferocious. Like love sometimes looks at systems of power and is like, I will burn you down. Like it's sometimes like, Kali is also loving from the Hindu tradition. Um, and like, and for those who are listening, Kali is the Hindu goddess of death, rebirth, and rage. Uh,
Yeah.
right? And like, so for me, even recently, some of these energies of like, around like activism and kind of looking more at like social change and how are we actually like reimagining the structures of our world and our communities has required a level of like, this doesn't mean that we look at systems of oppression or like injustices or violence out in the world and just go like, oh, we'll just love you and that'll be okay. Sometimes love is like is fiery. Sometimes it takes action. And that's been recent. That's been more like in the last four or 5 years with some like social justice work I was doing and like really holding that with love as an ethic and seeing love in its many forms there. So I don't know. That's a really long answer.
It's wonderful. I
I
love
guess
that.
there's probably more, but that's the high level. That's
I
the cliff
just
notes.
I just feel that society has been conditioned, like, obviously there's a type of love, there's like being in love, and I just feel like the movies are doing us a disservice of what love is. 'Cause it's like the Cinderella love or like the Disney love or like, you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
so to your point earlier, it's like, oh yeah, that is, yeah, society does think of it as this like soft, as this like, I will give all of myself to this other person and that's love. We're
Well,
actually the autonomy.
and it's been defanged. That's part of it, right? Like we skip over the part in the Bible, and I can't believe I'm about to make a Bible reference. Like my old self would have been like, "What?" But like the part that we skip over in the Bible is that right before Jesus was arrested and crucified, he went into the temple and was flipping tables. Like he literally made such a scene that he had to be escorted out because he was looking at systems of power and saying absolutely not. And this was a man whose whole life was about the embodiment of love. Now, you could look at that and you could say, well, he faltered. You could look at that and say, maybe he was just human. Or you could look at that and say, no, that's one of the many faces that love can take. And so, can we revere that too?
Yeah. Wow,
Yeah.
that's really interesting. I'm also like you're sitting here hearing you speak about love, and I'm like, your incarnation cross is literally the vessel of love. Her core gift is the gate 15, the love for humanity and like the gate of extreme. So like to really understand all perspectives of literally everything is part of like you.
Yeah.
Like, oh my God, the alignment here.
It can also, y'all, it can be a little tumultuous sometimes as a consequence of that. Because I'm like, oh, there's like a corner of my psyche that I like, oh, it's shadow. Let's like, how do I love this little like demon gargoyle like part of myself? Or this person, and it's part of the lesson, I'm figuring it out as we go. But thank you for that. It's like cool hearing it grounded in my human design because I haven't actually revisited a lot of this in a while.
Yeah. And I'm gonna ask you just two more questions, and we'll wrap it up.
Yeah.
So I would love to hear a little bit more on the ancient technology aspect because you hear ancient, I'm like way past, not relevant, and then I hear technology, and I'm like future, forward, here, now. So tell me, I need more information. I've never heard of ancient technology.
Yeah. So, okay, this was like mind bendy for me too. And also, by the way, my north
Aquarius.
node, yeah, is no, it's that my midheavens in Taurus, my north node, which is about life's purpose, is Aquarius. And I used
Aquarius.
to look at
Yes.
this and I was like, the fuck does that mean? I don't know what any of that means. Aquarius is all about tech, like new, like it's about technologies and like evolution of the collective broadly. There's a lot you'd say on
What
Aquarius, right?
house are you in? Do you know?
Aquarius is in my 11th house.
Okay. And that one's spirituality?
That one is collective health. 12th is spirituality. 11th is the collective.
Okay, so both Lauren and I have Aquarius in our North Node, and mine's in my fifth house of creativity, though. And
Yeah. Oh, that's interesting. Oh, that's cool.
I know.
Wait, that makes so much sense. Well, because an Aquarius has this technology energy, right?
Mhm.
And so we think of technology like computer. I'm looking at a wireless keyboard and my microphone and my iPhone, and, Claude is running in the background. And it's like we've forgotten actually that there is a technology of what it means to be human that ancient cultures knew and revered and centered. There's a technology of how our nervous systems actually sync up with each other around our somatics, around like how our bodies process information and like our ability to access intuition and spirit. Um, there's also technology of ceremony and ritual and like our interface with the earth that ancient cultures and indigenous cultures, it's not old, like indigenous cultures still hold this wisdom. They still like those are technologies too. We've just been taught that they're not, or to look down upon them, but they're actually just as powerful, if not more, especially when we fully unlock what's possible there, i.e., right, through our connection to God, spirit, something larger than ourselves. Like you've even experienced like the technology of our dreams, of being able to receive downloads, of creative forces moving through communities, of community organization, of ritual. Like some of these things can't be explained. Science is starting to catch up with them. But when we're able to actually plug into those ancient technologies and center them and like allow them to lead, literal freaking magic happens. And that's coming from my like PhD brain that likes to understand, like it's inexplicable what's possible. So that's how I describe it.
Wow. I actually want to do like a whole other podcast on this and like how to like integrate ancient technology into everything. So we're gonna pause on that because I'm setting up another podcast with you.
Hell yeah.
And then my final question, if someone were to really know you,
Mm.
what would they need to know about you?
Mm. Mm. Let's see. I think the thing I want to say is that at the core of who I am, there are a lot of these things that I do that I know about that I like leading people through. And fundamentally, I am deeply freaking sensitive, like really feel things so deeply that, one of the reasons I found myself on this path was because my inner world felt so big and unruly and beyond language that I actually, in many ways, couldn't hold it by myself. And given like using the tools that I was given, but now that I have the tools, and I certainly have moments where I still like where I'm like, woof, where I still get overwhelmed by the depth of feeling. But baby, now that I have the tools, I'm like, oh my God, the ability to feel everything is, I would not trade it for anything in the world.
Wow. Yeah, that's massive. So
Yeah.
a lot of people are so afraid of feeling.
Yeah. And I still get scared. I still have moments where I'm like, ooh, that feels really big. But I think that's actually one of the reasons why I love what I do, because that doesn't scare me and other people anymore. Like I know what it's like to be scared of that. And I also think that that's like literally where our magic is. If we can breathe through it, like learn that we can actually breathe through that and in the dark.
I love that so much.
Yeah.
Okay, where can people reach you? How can they find you? We'll also have this in the show notes too.
So I am somewhat active on my Instagram at Dr. Lauren Borden. You should absolutely check out our website at rememberingthegarden.com. You can reach out to us there. We have all kinds of amazing goodies and like ways of getting involved that are like of different levels, right? So if you just want to play for free and get a taste, if you are like ready for the full shebang, and also Sasha has created it, so it's actually like kind of fun to just be on. And of course, I'm actually always hungry to connect with people. So like, don't be shy if that's something that you want to drop in and connect.
Awesome. Amazing. We'll also have all the links in the show notes for you. And Lauren, thank you so much for being on. This was incredible. And I can't wait for the next one.
We're going to talk about ancient technology. It's going to be great. Okay.
Stay tuned.
I love you so much. Thank you so
I
much
love
for having me, love.
you.
This was freaking great.
Of course. And stuff.